Hey, what's up guys? Combat Critique here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between Rob Font and Deiveson Figueiredo. So let's get started. If we take a look at the records of these two guys, starting with Rob. So Rob has 27 fights in total and he's won 20 of his 27 fights, lost 7. If we talk about his 20 wins, he has 9 via knockout, 4 via submission and 7 via decision. Talking about his 7 losses, he has just 1 loss via submission and another 6 via decision. If you take a look at his records in decision fights alone, he has 7 wins and 6 losses, so his record is not really good when it comes to decisions. Now let's take a look at Figueiredo's record. So Figueiredo has 25 fights and he has won 21 of his 25 fights, lost just thrice, twice to the same guy. And now if we talk about his 21 wins, he has 9 wins via knockout, 8 via submission and 4 via decision. So most of his wins have been submission or knockout wins. Raw Font really does not have a lot of submission wins. He has just 4 wins out of his 20 by means of submission. If we talk about the losses of Figueiredo, he has been knocked out once, submitted once, and he has also lost via decision once. He also has a draw on his record. Now let's take a look at the physical and career stats for both these guys, starting with the height. Height is 5'8" for Raw Font and it is 5'5" for Figueiredo. So a clear 3-inch height advantage goes to Raw Font. Weight will be 135 pounds for both these guys. This is Figueiredo moving up from 125 to 135. So I think this will benefit him. He was cutting a lot of weight when he was fighting at 125. If we talk about the reach, it is 71 inches for Raw Font and it is 68 inches for Figueiredo. So a 3-inch reach advantage goes to Raw Font. Talking about the stance, both these guys are orthodox stance fighters. And if we talk about the age, surprisingly, these two were born in the same year. There's not much of an age difference between these two guys. Now let's take a look at the career stats, starting with the striking numbers. First up, we have the strikes landed per minute. Now this signifies the number of strikes that you land on your opponents per minute. On average, this is 5.7 for Raw Font and it is just 3.09 for Figueiredo. So in this case, the advantage clearly goes to Raw Font. He is landing a lot more significant strikes on his opponents per minute. Next up, we have the striking accuracy, which is 45% for Font and 55% for Figueiredo. So the clear advantage here goes to Figueiredo. He is more accurate with his strikes. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute. It basically means the number of strikes that you absorb from your opponents per minute on average. This should be as low as possible and it is 3.7 for Raw Font and 3.5 for Figueiredo. Both these guys are pretty even, but a slight advantage goes to Figueiredo because he is getting hit lesser. Striking defense is 57% for Raw Font and it is 51% for Figueiredo. So the advantage here goes to Raw Font. Overall, in the striking, 2 of the metrics favor Raw Font and the other 2 favor Deiveson Figueiredo. It's a really close fight when it comes to the stand-up. Both these guys are good. Now let's talk about the wrestling and the grappling stats, starting with the takedown average. It is 0.96 for Raw Font and 1.44 for Figueiredo. So Figueiredo has an advantage here. Takedown accuracy is 37% for Font and it is 42% for Figueiredo. Again, the advantage goes to Figueiredo. Takedown defense 46% for Font and 57% for Figueiredo. Again, the advantage goes to Figgy. Submission average is 0.4 for Raw Font and it is 1.8. Really more than 4 times that number for Figueiredo. So he has a huge advantage. Overall, in the striking, it is pretty much 50-50, a toss-up, but on the ground, in the wrestling, Figueiredo has a clear advantage. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by position for these two guys. Starting with Raw Font, 88% of all his strikes are from the standing position, 7% from the clinch and just 5% on the ground. If we compare this with Figueiredo, 72% of all his strikes are from the standing position, 7% from the clinch and 21% on the ground. So he uses ground and pound a lot more than Raw Font. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by target for these two guys. Starting with Font, 74% of all the strikes that Font throws are to the head, 18% to the body, and just 8% to the leg. If we compare this with Figueiredo, 64% of all the strikes that he throws are to the head, 26% to the body, and just 9% to the leg. So Figueiredo goes to the body more often than Raw Font, and Raw Font is basically headhunting all the time. He doesn't like to go to the body or to the leg. He doesn't want to fight in the clinch as well as on the ground. He is pretty much in the standing position, just boxing. Now let's take a look at some of the previous fights of these two guys, starting with Raw Font. So Font in his last fight lost to Corey Sandhagen, and in this fight Sandhagen had 7 takedowns over Raw Font, as well as he was ahead in terms of the strikes landed column. Sandhagen managed to win a unanimous decision. This was a 5-round fight and it happened in August of this year. If we talk about the fight before that, Rob Font beat Adrian Yanez in the very first round via knockout. He lost to Marlon Vera before that, and in this fight, even though Vera was behind in terms of the strikes landed, he had 3 knockdowns over Rob Font and he was able to win a unanimous decision in a 5-round fight. Before this, Rob Font also lost to Jose Aldo, and in this fight, Jose Aldo also had a strike disadvantage. He landed lesser strikes compared to Rob Font, but he had 2 knockdowns over Rob Font, and he won the fight via unanimous decision, again in a 5-round fight. Before this, Rob Font beat Cody Garbrandt via unanimous decision. He had a huge striking advantage. Before this, Rob Font beat Marlon Vera, and in this fight, he finished him in the very first round via knockout. Before this, he also beat Ricky Simon, and he was at an advantage in terms of the strikes landed. But Ricky Simon landed 6 takedowns over Raw Font. So Raw Font has been taken down by a lot of guys. He was taken down twice by Marlon Moraes and thrice by Cody Garbrandt. He was taken 7 times by Corey Sandhagen. I think Figueiredo, if he wants to fight smart, he will try to use the same tactic that Corey Sandhagen used and take this fight to the ground. It is a 3-round fight. I think if Figueiredo manages to steal 2 rounds, he will win this fight. Now let's take a look at Figgy's previous few fights. Figueiredo in his last fight lost to Brandon Moreno via knockout in the 3rd round, and this happened in January of this year. So he is taking a full 11 months off and now coming back to fight at a higher weight class. Before this fight, Figueiredo beat Brandon Moreno, and in this fight he won via unanimous decision, and he was able to land 3 knockdowns over Brandon Moreno. He had 2 takedowns over Brandon Moreno. Moreno was actually ahead in terms of the strikes landed. Before this, Brandon Moreno beat Figueiredo, and in this fight, Brandon Moreno was ahead in terms of the strikes landed, as well as he had a knockdown, and he was able to finish the fight via submission rear naked choke in the 3rd round. Before this was the draw, and this is the first time that they fought. I think Figueiredo should have won this fight, but it was deemed to be a draw. And before this, Figueiredo beat Alex Perez in the very first round via guillotine choke. He beat Joseph Benavides twice in a row, and this man has fought at the top level for quite a while. Both these guys are the same age. A lot of people are thinking that Deiveson Figueiredo is too old now. Well, Raw Font is actually a few months older than even Deiveson Figueiredo. I don't think age will play much of a factor. What can play a factor is that Raw Font is at a bigger weight class, and Figueiredo, even though I don't think Figueiredo will be small in the octagon, I think moving up, his stats that we saw are mostly based on fights that happened at 125. I don't know how his wrestling start will look at 135. But if I have to pick a winner, I think I'll go with Figgy. I think he has the better wrestling. He definitely has the better submission game. If he takes this fight to the ground, he can very well win. In terms of the striking, it is 50-50. It's not like Raw Font has a huge advantage. Figueiredo is a good underdog pick. I think Raw Font will be the favorite for this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.